The afternoon sun beat down on the cracked sidewalk as 12-year-old Daniel made his way home from school. His backpack, held together with duct tape in 3 different places, bounced against his thin shoulders with each step. Inside were his textbooks, carefully wrapped in brown paper bags to protect them, because he couldn't afford to pay for damaged books at the end of the year. Daniel's shoes were a size too small. He'd gotten them from the donation bin at church 6 months ago, and his feet had grown since then. But he didn't complain. His mom was doing everything she could, working at the diner from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, then rushing to her evening shift at the grocery store that lasted until 10 at night. Sometimes Daniel wouldn't see her for days except for the notes she left on the kitchen table, with a few dollars for food and reminders that she loved him. He lived in the kind of neighborhood where people didn't make eye contact much, where the streetlights were always broken and nobody bothered to fix them, where the sound of sirens was so common it became like background music. But Daniel had learned to find beauty in small things, the way the sun hit the windows of the old buildings, the stray cat that sometimes followed him for a block or two, the smell of Mrs. Rodriguez's cooking that drifted from her apartment window. Today was Tuesday, which meant Daniel had exactly $3.50 in his pocket. His mom had left it for him that morning with a note that said to get himself something to eat after school. He'd been thinking about it all day. Maybe the corner store would have those chicken patties on sale. If he was lucky, he could get one of those and still have enough left over for a small juice. The street was busier than usual. Cars honked and swerved around each other. A bus rumbled past, belching black smoke. Daniel walked close to the building, staying out of the way. He'd learned that too, how to make himself small, how to not draw attention. It was safer that way. He was 3 blocks from home when he heard it, a sound that made his heart squeeze tight in his chest. A whimpering, soft and desperate, the kind of sound that speaks of pain in a language everyone understands. Daniel stopped walking. Other people rushed past him, heads down, focused on getting wherever they needed to go. Nobody else seemed to hear it. Or maybe they heard it and just didn't want to get involved. That happened a lot in his neighborhood, but Daniel couldn't keep walking. He turned toward the sound and saw something that made his stomach drop. There in the gutter between 2 parked cars lay a dog, a beautiful golden retriever, the kind of dog he'd only seen in movies or through the windows of houses in the nice part of town when his mom took him on the bus to her grocery store job. The dog's fur was matted with dirt and blood. Its back leg was twisted at an angle that wasn't right. One of its eyes was swollen shut. It lifted its head slightly when it saw Daniel approaching, and that whimper came again. Weaker this time, more desperate. Daniel knelt down slowly, his worn-out jeans pressing into the wet, dirty ground. He didn't care. His hands were shaking as he reached out carefully, letting the dog smell him first. That's what he'd read in a book once at the school library. Let them smell you so they know you're not a threat. The dog's nose twitched. Its one good eye looked up at Daniel with something that looked like hope. Or maybe just exhaustion. The dog tried to wag its tail and Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. Even hurt this bad, the dog was trying to be friendly. "Hey there," Daniel whispered. His voice cracked a little. "It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." He looked around, hoping maybe the dog's owner was nearby, frantically searching. But there was nobody. Just the endless stream of cars and people who were too busy to notice one hurt animal on the side of the road. Daniel carefully examined the dog without touching the injured leg. There was a gash on the dog's side, still bleeding slowly. The back leg definitely looked broken. The dog needed help, real help. The kind that cost money Daniel didn't have. He sat back on his heels, his mind racing. He should call someone. Animal control, maybe. But he'd heard stories about what happened to hurt animals that nobody claimed. Besides, he didn't have a phone. His mom couldn't afford to get him one. The dog whimpered again, and Daniel made a decision. He couldn't just leave it here to die. He wouldn't be able to live with himself. Without thinking too hard about it, Daniel pulled off his jacket. It wasn't much, just a thin windbreaker with holes in the pockets, but it was all he had. Underneath, he wore a t-shirt that used to be his mom's. It was too big for him, which was good because it meant it would last longer before he outgrew it. He carefully slid the jacket under the dog, trying to create a makeshift stretcher. The dog yelped when Daniel moved it, and Daniel's hands shook harder. He hated causing more pain, but he had to get the dog somewhere safe. "I'm sorry," he murmured. I'm so sorry. But I gotta move you, okay? I gotta get you help. The dog seemed to understand. It went limp, trusting this strange boy with gentle hands and a soft voice. Daniel looked at the blood still seeping from the wound on the dog's side. He needed to stop the bleeding, at least a little bit. He looked down at his t-shirt. It was one of only 3 shirts he owned, but the dog needed it more than he did. With trembling hands, Daniel grabbed the bottom of his shirt and pulled. The fabric was old and thin, and it tore easily. He ripped off a long strip, then another, leaving his shirt barely covering his stomach. The October air was cold against his skin, but he ignored it. As carefully as he could, Daniel wrapped the strips of fabric around the dog's side, covering the wound. The dog whined softly but didn't try to bite. It seemed to know Daniel was trying to help. Now came the hard part. The dog had to weigh at least 60 pounds, maybe more. Daniel himself barely weighed 90. But he'd spent the last year hauling boxes at the corner market for $5 every Saturday. His arms were stronger than they looked. He took a deep breath and slowly, carefully lifted the dog using the jacket as a sling. His back screamed in protest. His arms shook. But he held on. There was a veterinary clinic about 8 blocks away. Daniel had passed it 100 times on the bus with his mom. It was in a better neighborhood, the kind with clean streets and flower boxes in the windows. He'd never been inside, but he'd seen the sign, Riverside Animal Hospital. Dr. Patricia Chen, DVM 8 blocks, with a 60-pound injured dog in his arms, and $3.50 in his pocket that definitely wouldn't be enough. Daniel started walking. After the first block, his arms were on fire. After the second, he had to stop and rest, setting the dog down gently on a bus bench. An elderly woman sitting there looked at him with concern. "You okay, son?" she asked. "Just helping a hurt dog, ma'am," Daniel panted. She looked at the dog, then at Daniel's torn shirt and the sweat already dripping down his face. She dug in her purse and pulled out a bottle of water. "Here," she said, pressing it into his free hand. "You look like you need this more than I do." Daniel wanted to cry at the kindness. "Thank you," he managed to say. He opened the water bottle and poured a little into his cupped hand, offering it to the dog. The dog lapped it up weakly, its tail giving the smallest wag. 3 more blocks to go. Daniel lifted the dog again and kept walking. People stared at him now. A skinny kid in a torn shirt, carrying a bleeding dog wrapped in a ratty jacket. He probably looked crazy, but he didn't care. His arms felt like they might fall off. His back was screaming. The small lunch he'd had at school was long gone and his stomach growled. But every time he looked down at the dog's face, at that one eye looking up at him with trust, he found the strength to take another step. By the time the veterinary clinic came into view, Daniel was stumbling. His vision was blurry with exhaustion and sweat. But he'd made it. He'd actually made it. The clinic was beautiful. Clean white walls and big windows. Through the glass door, he could see a waiting room with actual chairs that matched and magazines on a table. It looked like a place from a different world. A world where people had money to spend on their pets. Daniel stood outside for a moment, suddenly aware of how he must look. Dirty, bloody, poor. Would they even let him in? The dog whimpered softly, and Daniel remembered why he was here. He pushed open the door. The air conditioning hit Daniel first. It was so cold compared to outside that goosebumps broke out across his arms. The waiting room smelled clean. Antiseptic mixed with something floral like air freshener. 3 people sat in the matching chairs, each with a pet carrier or a dog on a leash. They all looked up when Daniel stumbled in, and he saw their expressions change from curiosity to shock. A woman behind the front desk stood up quickly. She was young, maybe in her 20s, with her hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. Her name tag said Jessica, veterinary assistant. Her eyes went wide when she saw the dog in Daniel's arms, blood soaking through the makeshift bandages. "Oh my God," she said, rushing around the desk. "What happened?" Daniel's voice came out scratchy and tired. "I found him on the road. He's hurt bad. His leg is broken and he's bleeding. Please, he needs help." Jessica's professional training kicked in immediately. "Come with me, quickly." She held open a door that led to the back, and Daniel followed, grateful he didn't have to hold the dog much longer. His arms were shaking so badly he was afraid he might drop the poor animal. She led him into an examination room, bright and sterile, with a metal table in the center. "Set him down here as gently as you can." Daniel lowered the dog onto the table and his arms immediately felt like jelly. He had to grab the edge of the table to keep himself steady. The dog lay there panting heavily, its one good eye rolling with pain and fear. "I'll get Dr. Chen," Jessica said, already moving toward the door. "Stay with him, okay? Talk to him. Keep him calm." Then she was gone and Daniel was alone with the dog. He reached out carefully and placed his hand on the dog's head, stroking gently between its ears. The fur was soft under all the dirt and blood. "You're gonna be okay," Daniel whispered, even though he wasn't sure if that was true. "The doctor's coming. They're gonna fix you up. You're gonna be okay." The dog's tail moved slightly, just the tip, like it took all the energy it had left to respond to the kindness in Daniel's voice. The door burst open, and a woman in her 40s rushed in, wearing scrubs printed with little paw prints. Her face was all business, but her eyes were kind. "This must be Dr. Chen." She moved to the table immediately, her hands already examining the dog with practiced efficiency. "Tell me what happened," she said, not looking up from the dog. Daniel explained as quickly as he could. Finding the dog in the gutter. The blood, the leg, how he'd carried it 8 blocks to get here. Dr. Chen listened while her hands moved over the dog, checking vitals, examining wounds. Jessica had come back in and was already setting up an IV line. "You did good getting him here," Dr. Chen said, and something in Daniel's chest loosened a little at those words. "This is definitely a broken leg. Looks like he was hit by a car, probably a few hours ago based on the swelling. He's dehydrated and in shock. We need to get him stabilized, clean these wounds, and get some x-rays to see what we're dealing with internally." Daniel nodded, relief flooding through him. They could help. They would help. Then Dr. Chen turned to look at him fully for the first time, and her expression changed. She took in his torn shirt, the blood on his hands and arms, his 2 small shoes, the exhaustion written all over his face. "Is this your dog, son?" she asked gently. "No, ma'am. I just found him. Do you know who he belongs to?" Daniel shook his head. "No, ma'am." There was nobody around. I looked. Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with Jessica. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication. Then Dr. Chen straightened up and crossed her arms. "Okay, here's the situation. This dog needs immediate care. We're talking emergency surgery to set that leg. Antibiotics, pain medication, overnight monitoring. Maybe several nights depending on how the surgery goes." She paused. "We're looking at around $200 minimum. Maybe more if there are complications." $200. Daniel felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his 3 crumpled dollar bills and the handful of change. His lunch money. All the money he had in the world. "I have $350, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He held out the money with a shaking hand, knowing how pathetic it looked. "But I can get more. I can work. I can pay you back, I promise. I work at the corner market on Saturdays. I can work here too. I can clean or mop or whatever you need. I'll work every day after school. Please don't let him die because I don't have the money. Please." His voice broke on the last word and he hated himself for it. Hated that he was poor. Hated that he couldn't just fix this problem. This dog had survived getting hit by a car and being left in a gutter. It didn't deserve to die just because Daniel was broke. The room was quiet except for the dog's labored breathing. Jessica was looking at the floor, her jaw tight. Dr. Chen was staring at Daniel and he couldn't read the expression on her face. Finally, she spoke. "How old are you?" 12, ma'am. "And you carried the 60-pound dog 8 blocks to get here?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "In a shirt you tore up to bandage his wounds?" "Yes, ma'am." Dr. Chen shook her head slowly and Daniel's heart sank. She was going to say no. She was going to tell him to take the dog and leave. Where would he even take it? Back to the gutter where he found it. But then Dr. Chen did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a big smile, but a real one, the kind that reached her eyes. "Jessica, get this dog prepped for surgery. Start fluids, get him stable, and let's get those x-rays done. I want to see exactly what we're working with." Daniel's head snapped up. "You'll help him?" "But I don't have the money." Dr. Chen held up a hand. "I'll help him because it's the right thing to do. Just like you did the right thing bringing him here." She paused, then added more softly. "My daughter used to bring home every hurt animal she found. Birds with broken wings. Cats with torn ears. She had your same heart, kid. She would have done exactly what you did today." Daniel noticed she said used to and would have past tense, but he didn't ask. Some sadness was too big for questions. But I do want something from you, Dr. Chen continued. This dog needs care even after the surgery. Someone to check on him. Keep him calm. Talk to him. Can you come by after school? Help Jessica walk any dogs we have boarding? Clean cages, maybe? Yes, Daniel said immediately. Yes, ma'am, I can do that. Every day. I promise. Good, then we have a deal. She turned to Jessica. Let's get to work. And Jessica, scan this dog for a microchip. Someone out there might be missing him. The next hour passed in a blur. Dr. Chen wouldn't let Daniel stay for the surgery. Something about it being against policy for non-owners to be in the surgical room. But she let him wait in the break room where Jessica brought him a sandwich from her lunch and a soda from the fridge. You should eat, she said kindly. You look like you're about to fall over. Daniel devoured the sandwich. He hadn't realized how hungry he was. The turkey and cheese tasted like the best thing he'd ever eaten, even though he knew it was probably just a regular sandwich. Jessica sat down across from him. That was a really brave thing you did today. Not many people would have stopped to help. Daniel shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I couldn't just leave him there. Most people would have. Most people do. Jessica took a sip of her coffee. We found a microchip, by the way, registered to an owner in the Hills District. The Hills District. That was where the rich people lived. Houses with 3-car garages and swimming pools. Daniel had only seen it through bus windows. Does that mean you can call them? Tell them their dog is here? Already did. Left a message. The phone number rang through to some kind of business line. Probably at work. Jessica checked her watch. Hopefully they'll call back soon. Daniel felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that the dog had a home to go back to. Disappointment that after today he'd probably never see the dog again. He'd gotten attached in just a few hours. That was stupid, he knew. But he couldn't help it. Dr. Chen came out 40 minutes later, pulling off her surgical gloves. She looked tired but satisfied. Surgery went well. The leg was a clean break. We were able to set it with pins. He'll need to stay off it for 6 weeks, but he should make a full recovery. No internal bleeding, no organ damage. He got lucky. Can I see him? Daniel asked. He's still under anesthesia, but sure. Come on. She led him to a recovery room where the dog lay on a padded table, breathing steadily. His leg was wrapped in a bright blue cast. Someone had cleaned his fur, and without all the dirt and blood, Daniel could see how beautiful the dog really was. Golden fur that shone even under the harsh clinic lights. A noble face even in sleep. Daniel reached out and gently touched the dog's head. Thank you, he whispered. He wasn't sure if he was talking to the dog or to Dr. Chen or to someone else entirely. His name is Max, Jessica said from the doorway, according to the microchip registration. And the owner is a Mr. Robert Chen. Dr. Chen's eyebrows went up. Chen, any relation to you? Jessica laughed. In a city of 500,000 people? Probably not. It's a common name. True. Did the owner call back? Not yet. But it's only been an hour. Dr. Chen nodded. Well, Max will be staying with us for at least a few days. We need to monitor him, make sure there's no infection, keep him on pain medication. She turned to Daniel, which means you'll have plenty of time to visit. If you want to. I want to, Daniel said immediately. I'll come tomorrow after school. Is that okay? More than okay. I'm counting on it. Dr. Chen's pager went off and she glanced at it. I've got another patient. Jessica, can you get Daniel's information? Phone number, address, so we can reach him if we need to? Daniel's face flushed. I don't have a phone, ma'am, but I can write down my address. If Dr. Chen was surprised by this, she didn't show it. That works. Jessica will set you up. She paused at the door. You did real good today, Daniel. Your mom should be proud. After she left, Jessica handed Daniel a form to fill out. Name, address, emergency contact. He wrote his mother's name and the diner's phone number. It was the only number he had. What time does your mom get off work? Jessica asked, glancing at the paper. Does she know where you are? Daniel checked the clock on the wall. 4:30. She's at her second job now. She won't be home until after 10. Jessica frowned slightly but didn't comment. Instead, she said, Do you need bus fare to get home? It's getting late. Daniel did need bus fare. He'd spent his last money on trying to help Max, but accepting felt like too much. These people had already done so much. I can walk, he said. It's 6 miles back to your neighborhood, Jessica said gently. I looked up your address. Take the bus fare, Daniel. It's okay to accept help sometimes. She pressed $2 into his hand before he could argue. Then she walked him to the front door of the clinic. We open at 8, but you should come around 3:30 after school. That's when I usually walk the dogs we're boarding. You can help with that and then spend time with Max. I'll be here, Daniel promised. The bus ride home felt surreal. Daniel stared out the window as the neighborhoods changed from nice to rough. His arms ached. His back ached. His stomach was full for the first time in weeks thanks to Jessica's sandwich. And somewhere behind him in a clean clinic with bright lights, a dog named Max was sleeping peacefully with a blue cast on his leg. Daniel had saved a life today. He'd done something that mattered. And for the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe he mattered too. When he got home to his empty apartment, he found his mom's usual note on the kitchen table. But today he had a story to tell her. He pulled out a piece of notebook paper and started writing everything down, wanting to capture every detail before he forgot. He wrote about Max and Dr. Chen and Jessica, about carrying the dog 8 blocks, about how sometimes doing the right thing doesn't cost money, it just costs caring. He fell asleep at the kitchen table, his head on his arms, dreaming about golden fur and wagging tails and second chances. Daniel woke up to his mother shaking his shoulder gently. The kitchen light was on, and through the window he could see it was dark outside. The notebook paper he'd been writing on was stuck to his cheek. Baby, what are you doing sleeping at the table? His mom's voice was tired but worried. Her diner uniform smelled like grease and coffee. And what happened to your shirt? Daniel sat up, blinking. For a moment he'd forgotten about everything. Then it all came rushing back. Max, the clinic, Dr. Chen. Mom, I have to tell you something. Something amazing happened today. He told her everything while she made herself a cup of instant coffee, her second job at the grocery store already hours behind her. She listened with wide eyes, gasping when he got to the part about carrying Max 8 blocks, scolding him gently for tearing his shirt, tearing up when he told her about Dr. Chen agreeing to help. You did good, Danny, she said when he finished, pulling him into a hug that smelled like home despite everything. I'm so proud of you. But 8 blocks? Baby, you could have hurt yourself. I'm okay, Mom, and Max is okay too. That's what matters. She pulled back and looked at him with those eyes that could see right through him. This dog, he means something to you already, doesn't he? Daniel nodded. I know it's stupid. He's not even mine. He has an owner and everything. But it's not stupid, his mom interrupted. Having a big heart is never stupid. It's what makes you you, she sighed. I just wish I could give you more. A phone so you could call me. Money so you didn't have to worry about things like this. A dog of your own, maybe. Mom, don't. Daniel hated when she got like this. You give me everything I need. We're okay. We're barely okay, baby. I know you know that. You're too smart not to know. She stood up and drained her coffee cup. But we're trying. That's what matters. We're still trying. That night, Daniel lay in bed thinking about Max and about trying, about how everyone was just trying in their own way. Max was trying to heal. Daniel was trying to help. His mom was trying to keep them afloat. Dr. Chen was trying to save animals and maybe fill some hole left by her daughter. He fell asleep with his alarm set extra early. He wanted to get to school and back as fast as possible so he could get to the clinic. The next day dragged on forever. Daniel couldn't focus in any of his classes. His math teacher, Mrs. Patterson, actually asked if he was feeling okay because he'd never spaced out during her lesson before. Just tired, he said, which wasn't a lie. Finally, the last bell rang. Daniel practically ran out of school. He made it to the clinic by 3:15, 15 minutes earlier than Jessica had told him to come. But he couldn't help it. Jessica was at the front desk and smiled when she saw him come through the door. Someone's eager. Max is doing great, by the way. He woke up this morning and even ate some food. Can I see him? In a minute. First, let me show you what I need help with. She led him to the back where they kept dogs that were boarding. There were 5 of them. A little terrier with too much energy, 2 labs who were clearly best friends, a basset hound with the saddest eyes Daniel had ever seen, and a German shepherd who barked once when he saw Daniel but then wagged its tail. This is the crew, Jessica said. They all need walks. Just around the block, nothing crazy. Think you can handle it? Yes, ma'am, Jessica. You can call me Jessica. Ma'am makes me feel old and I'm only 26. Daniel smiled and took the leashes she handed him. Walking dogs was easier than carrying a 60-pound injured retriever 8 blocks. He could definitely do this. The dogs pulled him in 5 different directions at first, but he figured out how to keep them organized. The terrier wanted to sniff everything. The labs wanted to walk together, their leashes getting tangled every few feet. The basset hound walked slowly in no hurry to go anywhere. The German shepherd stayed close to Daniel's side like a guard. By the time they got back, Daniel's arms were sore again, but in a good way. Jessica showed him how to give the dogs fresh water and check their food bowls. She taught him the right way to clean the kennels without stressing the dogs out. She was patient, explaining everything twice if he needed it. "You're a natural," she said after an hour. "Most kids your age can't handle being around this many animals at once." "I like animals," Daniel said simply. "They don't care if you're poor or if your shoes don't fit. They just care if you're kind." Jessica looked at him for a long moment. "That's very wise for 12. Can I see Max now?" "Yeah, come on. He's been waiting for you." I swear he perks up every time the door opens like he's looking for someone. Max was in a recovery kennel, bigger than the regular ones, with soft blankets and a water bowl. When Daniel walked in, the dog's tail started wagging immediately. His whole body wiggled with excitement despite the blue cast on his leg. "Hey, Max," Daniel said softly, kneeling down. Max pushed his nose through the kennel bars, licking Daniel's hand. "You remember me, huh? You're looking so much better." And he was. Max's eyes were bright now, both of them open. His fur was clean and shiny. Without the blood and dirt, he looked like a completely different dog. Like a dog who belonged in one of those nice houses in the Hills district. Jessica opened the kennel door. "You can sit with him if you want. Just be gentle with the leg." Daniel crawled into the kennel and Max immediately put his head in Daniel's lap. Daniel stroked his soft ears and told him about his day at school. About his boring math class and the surprisingly good lunch they'd had. Spaghetti, which was rare. About how he'd run all the way to the clinic because he couldn't wait to see if Max was okay. Max listened to every word, his tail thumping against the blankets. "His owner still hasn't called back," Jessica said from the doorway. "Dr. Chen left 3 messages now. It's weird. You'd think if your dog was missing for days, you'd be checking your messages constantly." Daniel's stomach did a little flip. Part of him hoped the owner would never call. But that was selfish. Max belonged to someone who probably missed him just as much as Daniel would miss him. "Maybe they're on vacation," Daniel suggested. "My friend Tommy, his family went on vacation once and didn't get back for 2 weeks." "Maybe," Jessica said, but she sounded doubtful. Daniel visited Max every day that week. Monday through Friday, he'd rush from school to the clinic, walk the boarding dogs, clean kennels, and then spend an hour with Max. The dog's tail would start wagging the moment he heard Daniel's voice in the hallway. They had a routine now. Daniel would sit in the kennel, Max would put his head in his lap, and Daniel would talk about everything and nothing. He told Max about his dreams, about how he wanted to go to college someday, even though he didn't know how he'd afford it, about how he wanted to be someone who mattered, who did something important, about how sometimes he felt invisible, like he could disappear and nobody would notice except his mom. Max never judged, never interrupted, just listened with those kind brown eyes and wagged his tail. By Friday, Dr. Chen still hadn't heard from Max's owner. She'd left 7 messages now and even tried looking up the business number online. It led to some company called Chen Enterprises, but when she called during business hours, she kept getting transferred to different departments and nobody seemed to know anything about a lost dog. "It's like calling a ghost," Dr. Chen told Jessica while Daniel was there. "The number works, but nobody answers. I'm starting to think maybe the microchip information is outdated." "What happens if the owner never calls?" Daniel asked, trying to keep the hope out of his voice. "Well, legally we're supposed to hold him for 30 days. If nobody claims him after that, he goes up for adoption." Dr. Chen looked at Daniel carefully. "Why, you interested in adopting him?" Daniel's heart jumped. I couldn't afford the adoption fee, or dog food, or anything really. Let's not worry about that yet. Let's just see what happens." That weekend felt longer than any weekend in Daniel's life. He couldn't visit Max because the clinic was closed on Sundays and only open half-day Saturday, which was when Daniel worked at the corner market. He spent all day Saturday hauling boxes and stocking shelves, his mind on a golden retriever 8 blocks away. Monday couldn't come fast enough. When it finally did, Daniel ran to the clinic the moment school ended. He burst through the door, ready to see Max, and stopped short. There was a man at the front desk. A man in an expensive suit, the kind Daniel had only seen on TV. His hair was graying at the temples, and he had the kind of watch that probably cost more than Daniel's mom made in a year. He was talking to Dr. Chen in a voice that was tight with emotion. Been searching everywhere. I've had people looking. I've called every shelter, every clinic. I thought he was dead. I thought I'd lost him. Daniel's heart sank. This was Max's owner. It had to be. Dr. Chen saw Daniel in the doorway and gestured him over. Mr. Chen, this is Daniel. He's the boy I told you about on the phone. The one who found Max. The man turned to look at Daniel, and Daniel saw his eyes were red like he'd been crying. When he spoke, his voice was thick. You found my dog? Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. I'm Robert Chen. Max is my... His voice broke. Max is my best friend. He got out 3 weeks ago. The gate was left open by a contractor. I've been looking ever since. Every day, every night, I was starting to lose hope. 3 weeks. Max had been missing for 3 weeks, surviving on the streets before getting hit by that car. Dr. Chen left me messages, Robert continued. But I was out of the country on business. Emergency trip. My assistant was supposed to check my messages, but he shook his head. It doesn't matter. What matters is Max is alive because of you. He looked at Daniel with an intensity that made Daniel want to shrink back, but there was no anger in that gaze. Only gratitude. And something else. Something like wonder. Tell me what happened, Robert said. Please, I want to know everything. So Daniel told the story again, finding Max in the gutter, the blood, the broken leg, carrying him 8 blocks, tearing his shirt for bandages, using his lunch money. Robert listened without interrupting, and by the time Daniel finished, there were tears running down the man's face. He didn't bother wiping them away. How old are you? Robert asked. 12. 12. Robert shook his head slowly. When I was 12, I wouldn't have stopped. I would have kept walking. Most adults wouldn't have stopped. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. What's fair? What do I pay someone who saved my dog's life? 1,000? 2,000? No, Daniel said quickly. I don't want money. I just wanted to help. Everyone wants money, son. Everyone needs money. Not for this, Daniel insisted. His face was hot. Max needed help. That's all that mattered. Robert stared at him like he was trying to solve a puzzle. You're serious? Yes, sir. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. Mr. Chen, there is the matter of the medical bills. The surgery, the medication, the boarding. It comes to $1,840. Robert didn't even blink. He wrote out a check and handed it to her, then wrote another one. This is for Daniel's time, for taking care of Max, for visiting him every day. He held out the second check. Daniel could see the amount. $1,000. More money than he'd ever seen in his life. Sir, I can't. You can and you will, Robert said firmly. My assistant told me you've been here every single day. Walking dogs, cleaning kennels, sitting with Max. Dr. Chen says Max wouldn't eat the first 2 days until you showed up and convinced him. You did more than save his life. You gave him a reason to fight to get better. Daniel's eyes burned. He took the check with shaking hands. Can I... His voice cracked. Can I say goodbye to him? Robert's expression softened. Of course. I'll come with you. They walked to the recovery room together. Daniel and this man named Robert Chen, who wore suits that cost more than Daniel's entire wardrobe times 100. Max heard them coming and started making excited noises that happy wine dogs make when they see someone they love. But when Robert opened the kennel door, Max didn't rush to him like Daniel expected. Instead, the dog looked between both of them, tail wagging for both like he couldn't decide who to greet first. Hey, buddy, Robert said, his voice breaking again. He knelt down carefully, mindful of the cast, and Max finally pressed against him, making sounds that were almost like crying. I missed you so much. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. Daniel stood back, feeling like he was intruding on something private. This was their reunion. He was just the kid who'd helped. His job was done. But Max kept looking back at him like he was asking why Daniel wasn't coming closer. He's gotten attached to you, Robert said, noticing. Come here. It's okay. Daniel sat down next to them and Max put his head on Daniel's knee while keeping his body pressed against Robert, like he wanted both of them. Like in his dog mind, they were both his people now. They sat there for a while, the three of them, not talking much. Robert stroked Max's head. Daniel rubbed Max's ears the way he'd learned the dog liked. Max's tail thumped steadily against the floor. Finally, Robert spoke. "Tell me about yourself, Daniel. Where do you live? Do you go to school nearby?" Daniel told him about Roosevelt Middle School, about living 6 miles away, about his mom and her 2 jobs. He didn't mean to tell so much, but something about the way Robert listened made the words come easier. The man didn't look at his phone once, didn't get distracted, just listened like what Daniel was saying mattered. "Your mom works 2 jobs?" Robert asked. "Yes, sir. She works at Betty's Diner in the morning and Fairway Grocery at night. And you're home alone a lot." It wasn't a question. Daniel nodded anyway. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Robert asked. The question caught Daniel off guard. Adults didn't usually ask him that. They asked about his grades or if he was staying out of trouble. But what he wanted to be? That was different. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "Something that helps people, maybe. Or animals." "I like animals." "I can see that," Robert smiled. "Max is usually pretty picky about people, but he loves you." Those 3 words hit Daniel harder than they should have. Max loves you. When was the last time anyone had loved him besides his mom? When was the last time he'd felt like he mattered to anyone? "I love him too," Daniel whispered. Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that changed everything. "I want to meet your mother." Daniel looked up sharply. "Why?" "Because I want to thank her for raising a son who would tear his own shirt to save a dog he'd never met. Who would spend his lunch money trying to help? Who would carry a 60-pound injured animal 8 blocks when most grown men wouldn't do it?" Robert met Daniel's eyes. "That kind of character doesn't just happen. Someone taught you to be that way." Daniel felt his face get hot. "My mom's working right now." "She's always working." "Then I'll come back when she's not working." "What time does she get home?" "After 10. "But sir, you don't have to." "I want to," Robert said firmly. "Give me your address. I'll come by tomorrow evening. 6 o'clock. "Will she be home then?" Daniel did the math in his head. His mom had Tuesday nights off from the grocery store. She'd be home by 4 from the diner. "Yeah, she'll be home." Robert pulled out his phone and typed in the address Daniel gave him. Daniel was certain the man would take one look at his neighborhood and change his mind. People like Robert Chen didn't visit places like where Daniel lived. But he didn't say anything. "Now," Robert said, standing up and brushing off his expensive pants, "I need to take Max home. The doctor said he's clear to leave, but he needs to rest that leg for another 4 weeks. No running, no jumping." Daniel's heart squeezed. This was it, the goodbye he'd been dreading. He hugged Max carefully, burying his face in the dog's soft fur. "You be good, okay? Listen to your dad. Rest that leg. Get better." Max licked his face, and Daniel had to bite his lip to keep from crying. Robert watched this with an expression Daniel couldn't read. Then he said something unexpected. "You know, Max is going to need physical therapy. Short walks to keep the leg moving but not put too much pressure on it. I work long hours. I could use someone to help with that." Daniel looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, would you be interested in coming by after school a few days a week? Walking Max? Keeping him company? I'd pay you, of course. Say $20 an hour?" $20 an hour. Daniel made $5 for a whole Saturday at the corner market. $20 an hour was impossible money. Yes. "Yes, sir. I'd love to." "Good. Give me your mother's phone number at the diner. I'll call her tomorrow to arrange the details." Robert smiled. "I have a feeling Max would be miserable without his favorite person coming to visit anyway." They exchanged information, and then Robert carefully loaded Max into his car, a black SUV that was shinier than anything Daniel had ever seen. Max looked back through the window at Daniel, tail wagging until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Daniel stood on the sidewalk outside the clinic, the check for $1,000 folded in his pocket, and tried to process what had just happened. A week ago, he'd been a nobody, a poor kid in 2 small shoes who nobody noticed. Now he had $1,000 and a job walking a dog for $20 an hour. Jessica came outside and stood next to him. "That's some kind man," she said. "Not many people would have offered what he did." "I think he's just really grateful," Daniel said. "He should be. You saved his best friend." Jessica bumped his shoulder gently. You're going to cash that check, right? Not just stare at it until it expires? Daniel laughed, a little shaky. I'll cash it. This is more money than my mom makes in a month. Both jobs combined. Then you can help her out. Buy yourself shoes that fit. Get a phone, maybe. Jessica smiled. You deserve good things, Daniel. Don't feel guilty about accepting them. That night, Daniel showed his mom the check. She cried. Actually cried, tears running down her face as she held the piece of paper with all those zeros on it. Baby, this is too much. We can't accept this. Mom, I earned it. I saved his dog. And he wants to hire me to help with Max's physical therapy. $20 an hour, Mom. $20. His mother pulled him into a hug so tight it hurt. I'm so proud of you. So proud. But Danny, people like that, they don't usually mean what they say. Don't get your hopes up too high, okay? But Daniel's hopes were already high. Higher than they'd been in years. The next day at school dragged even worse than usual. Every time Daniel looked at the clock, only 5 minutes had passed. He couldn't focus. Couldn't sit still. His teacher, Mr. Peters, actually asked if he needed to go to the nurse. Finally, 3 o'clock came. Daniel ran home, taking shortcuts through alleys he usually avoided. He got there at 3:45, 15 minutes before Robert was supposed to arrive. His mom was already home wearing her nicest dress, a blue one she saved for church. She'd cleaned the apartment, which wasn't saying much because there wasn't much to clean, but she'd tried. Picked up magazines, wiped down the counters, lit a candle that made the place smell like vanilla instead of old building. Do I look okay? She asked nervously, smoothing down her dress. You look beautiful, Mom. They sat on the worn couch together, waiting. 6 o'clock came and went. Then 6:15, 6:30. Daniel felt his hope deflating like a balloon with a slow leak. His mom had been right. People like Robert Chen didn't come to neighborhoods like this. He'd probably looked up the address, seen where it was, and changed his mind. It's okay, baby, his mom said softly, seeing his face. We still have the check. That's more than we had before. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the fact that Daniel had let himself believe. Believe that maybe someone saw something special in him. Believe that maybe his life was going to change. At 6:45, there was a knock at the door. Daniel and his mom looked at each other. She stood up slowly, smoothed her dress again, and opened the door. Robert Chen stood there in jeans and a casual shirt, looking apologetic. I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was worse than I expected, and I got turned around. This neighborhood is like a maze. He wasn't making excuses. He'd actually come. Please, come in, Daniel's mom said, stepping back. I'm Linda, Daniel's mom. Robert stepped inside, and Daniel saw him take in the apartment. The sagging couch, the TV that only worked half the time, the kitchen table with 3 mismatched chairs because one had broken and they couldn't afford to replace it. The water stain on the ceiling from when the upstairs neighbor's pipe had burst. But Robert's face didn't change. Didn't show pity or judgment. He just smiled warmly and shook Linda's hand. It's nice to meet you, Ms. Linda. You have an extraordinary son. Thank you, she said, and Daniel could hear the pride in her voice. He told me what happened. I still can't believe he carried a 60-pound dog 8 blocks. Neither can I. I'm not sure I could have done it. Robert looked at Daniel. I brought someone who wanted to see you. He went back to his car and came back carrying Max, who immediately started wiggling when he saw Daniel. Robert set him down carefully, and Max limped over on 3 legs, keeping the casted leg up. He pushed his nose into Daniel's hand, tail going crazy. Hey, boy, Daniel laughed, scratching behind Max's ears. I missed you too. Robert pulled out a folder from the bag he'd been carrying. Ms. Linda, I wanted to talk to you about my proposal. I'd like to hire Daniel to help with Max's physical therapy. $20 an hour, 3 times a week for at least the next 4 weeks. After that, we can discuss making it a permanent arrangement if everyone's happy. Linda's eyes went wide. That's very generous, Mr. Chen, but please call me Robert. And it's not generous. It's necessary. Max needs this, and Daniel's the only person Max trusts besides me. He opened the folder. I also did some research. Daniel goes to Roosevelt Middle School. That school's overcrowded and underfunded. I noticed Daniel reading at a college level when he was sitting with Max. He was reading one of the veterinary textbooks from Dr. Chen's office. Daniel felt his face get hot. He'd hoped nobody had noticed that. He's always been a good reader, Linda said quietly. He's exceptional, Robert corrected, which is why I'd like to discuss scholarship opportunities. There are private schools in the city that offer full scholarships to students who qualify. I happen to sit on the board of one of them, Preston Academy. If Daniel's interested, I could arrange for him to take the entrance exam. The room went very quiet. Linda's hand found Daniel's shoulder and squeezed so hard it almost hurt. Preston Academy, she repeated. That's where senators send their kids. It's where smart kids go, Robert said. Kids who deserve a chance to reach their full potential. Daniel saved my dog's life. The least I can do is help open some doors for his future. Why? Linda's voice cracked. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. Robert was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. 10 years ago, my daughter passed away. She was 16. Cancer. Before she died, she made me promise something. She made me promise that I'd use my success to help kids who needed it. Kids who had big hearts and bigger dreams, but no resources to make those dreams real. He looked at Daniel. Your son has the biggest heart I've ever seen. My daughter would have loved him. Daniel felt tears running down his face and didn't bother wiping them away. I can't pay you back for this, Linda whispered. I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to let me help. That's all. Linda looked at Daniel and he saw his own hope reflected in her eyes. What do you think, baby? Daniel could barely speak. I think I want to try, Robert smiled. Then let's make it happen. 6 months passed like a dream Daniel was afraid he'd wake up from. 3 times a week. Robert's driver picked Daniel up after school and brought him to Robert's house in the Hills district. The first time Daniel saw the house, he'd thought there had been a mistake. It was massive. 3 stories with windows that seemed to go on forever. A yard that was bigger than the parking lot at his apartment complex. And inside, everything was clean and new and beautiful. But the best part was always Max. The dog would be waiting at the door, tail wagging so hard his whole body shook. His cast had come off after 6 weeks, and now Daniel's job was to walk him, slowly building up the leg's strength. They'd walk around the neighborhood together, Max trotting happily beside Daniel, both of them healing in their own ways. Robert was often home when Daniel arrived. Even though he ran a company that employed hundreds of people, he'd sit with Daniel and Max in the living room asking about school, about life, about dreams. He never talked down to Daniel, never made him feel poor or less than. He just listened like what Daniel had to say mattered. Daniel's mom had taken the job Robert offered at his company. It paid 3 times what her 2 old jobs combined had paid, with actual benefits and normal hours. She cried the day she turned in her notice at the diner and the grocery store. Happy tears, the kind that came from relief so deep it felt like breathing for the first time. They'd moved to a better apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had working heat and no water stains and neighbors who didn't fight at 3 in the morning. Daniel had his own room for the first time since he was 8. His mom had bought him shoes that fit, a coat for winter, school supplies that weren't donated or borrowed, but the biggest change was Preston Academy. Daniel had taken the entrance exam in March, terrified he'd fail. He'd never felt so dumb as when he sat in that room with kids who'd gone to expensive elementary schools and had tutors and traveled to other countries, kids who knew things he'd never even heard of. But somehow, impossibly, he'd passed. Not just passed, he'd scored in the top 10%. The letter came in April, full scholarship. Books included. Even a stipend for uniforms and supplies. His mom had cried again. Daniel was starting to realize that happiness could make you cry just as much as sadness. September came, and Daniel started 8th grade at Preston Academy. The school was nothing like Roosevelt Middle School. The classrooms had working computers. The cafeteria served actual meals, not just pizza and tater tots. The teachers knew his name by the end of the first week. The library had thousands of books, and Daniel could check out as many as he wanted.